Hello and welcome to Gefet in the Daf Yomi. I'm Yael Shimoni, bringing to you together with Hadran learning of Rashi and Tosfot and the Sugya to help us grasp a little more through our learning of Daf Yomi. So today we have two Sugyot, actually two Dapim, Ein Gimel and Ein Dalet, and also Dapim before and after, that are dealing with all kinds of Kodshim and also with light Kodshim. For example, Maaser Sheni. And our sugya is dealing mainly with Maaser Sheni, and what we're going to try to do is to take a little more information through Rashi and Tosfot, understanding Maaser Sheni. But before we'll do that, we will use Tosfot just to understand the pshat of the sugya, which is hard. There is a question there, a real problem in learning the first ibaya that was asked to Rav Yosef. So let's look at Daf Ein Gimel, and in Daf Ein Gimel we have a question that Rav Sheshet has been asked, an ibaya, and it's very hard to understand the pshat of this question. Let's look at the question. Ba'u minei merav Sheshet, arel mahu b'maaser, כהכי דיאליף פסח ממעשר לעניין הנינות, יאליף נע ממעשר מפסח לעניין הרדות, או דילמה חמור מקל יאליף, קל מחמור לא יאליף. So there are things that I can understand easily in this ibaya. First, I understand that one thing has been learned from Maaser to Pesach, which is aninut, and the question is whether or not a second thing is being learned from Pesach back to Maaser, which is arilut. How was Pesach learning from Maaser when it comes to aninut? Let's look at the psukim of Maaser Sheni. These are famous psukim, vidui maasrot, when a man brings the Maaser to Beit HaMikdash, and Biur Masot says, Lo achalti be'oni mimenu. Lo achalti be'oni mimenu means when I was an onen, which means if I had a dad that I had to take care of in front of me, I did not eat the meiser then when I was still dealing with burying my dad. That's Lo achalti be'oni mimenu. And Pesach learned this din from meiser because it's written specifically in Maaser that an onen cannot eat Maaser. And since Pesach is more chamur as far as his kedusha goes, so you learn from Maaser to Pesach in the way of kal v'chomer, from the kal to the chamur. If Maaser you can't eat when you're be'oni mimeno, kal v'chomer, Pesach cannot be eaten be'oni mimeno. And actually all of the coaching learned this from Maaser. This I understand. I understand the first line, Mahu, b'maaser ki hechi de'alif Pesach mimaaser l'inyan aninut. I can understand how Pesach learned from Maaser aninut in Kal V'chomer. I don't understand the second part of the Ibaya. Yalif na mimaaser mi Pesach l'inyan arelut. Odil machamur mikal yalif, kal michamur lo yalif. Pesach, it's written in the Torah that you cannot eat Pesach when you're Arel. Maaser, can an Arel eat Maaser? So the Gemara is asking, maybe we will learn from Pesach, which is Chamor, to Maaser Akal. But you can't learn Kal V'chomer in the opposite direction. The whole idea of Kal V'chomer is that you learn from something that's easier to something that's harder, and not vice versa. So what is the other side of the Ibaya? I understand the first part of the Ibaya is talking about Kal V'chomer. So maybe we can learn, we can't learn Pesach from Maaser because Pesach is more Chamor. So we'll only learn to one side and we won't learn to the other side. But how can anyone assume that there's an option to learn back from Pesach to Maaser? Pesach is more chamor. It's really hard to read these lines. So here Tosfot helps us to understand, and he says, Ve'im tomar, mai mi ba'alei pshita, nehechinei lafkal michamur. I don't understand the question. Obviously, the answer is no. We cannot learn from Pesach to Maaser because Pesach is more chamor than Maaser. This is our question. V'yesh lomar, the answer, the misapka lehu, ha de'alif Pesach v'Maaser, o b'gzera shava, de mimeno yalif. ילפינן נמי מעשר מפסח, אף על גב דעה בעיקל מחמור, או בקל וחומר יעליף ולא בגזרה שווה. אינמי מספקא לגזרה שווה מופנה או אינו מופנה. Tosfot says, yeah, the other option of learning is not a kal v'chomer that works the opposite direction. The question is whether or not I learn from kal v'chomer, or do I have another way to learn? For example, gzera shava. And it says Tosfot, I know exactly what gzera shava is the option. Gzera shava mimenu. Here Tosfot is sending me to Daf Ein Dalet, which you're learning today, where we see that Rabbi Yitzchak learned the din that Ariel is Aser and Maaser from Gzera Shava Mimenu. Let's read in Daf Ein Dalet. ואף רבי יצחק סבר הראל אסור במעשר, דאמר רבי יצחק מניין להראל שאסור במעשר, נאמר ממנו במעשר, נאמר ממנו בפסח, מה ממנו האמור בפסח הראל אסור בו, אף ממנו האמור במעשר, הראל אסור בו. So Tosfot tells us in order to understand the question, you have to see the entire Gemara and see that when the Tanaim, when the Amoraim are looking for an answer, how do we learn the din that Arel is a sur b'maiser? They will never use Kal v'chomer because that will never work. They will use other options. Rav Sheshet is going to use limud from Mishnah. Rabbi Yitzchak used the Gzera Shava, and actually Rabbi Yitzchak, he is the one who gave us the limud that will actually stay all the way till the end of the sugya. There is no kushiot, and Rabbi Yitzchak at the end, he stands. And how do we know that the Arel cannot eat Maaser? From the Gzera Shava Mimeno of Rabbi Yitzchak. So here we see that Tosfot helps us just understand the line in the Gemara. But before we finish this part, I want just to show you that what Tosfot said here raises a question in the Rambam. The Rambam in Maaser Sheni, Menet Arevai, Perek Gimel Halacha Daled, explains to us that Arel is Aser in Maaser Sheni, but he gives a different Gzera Shava. Let's look. Ha'arel katameh, says the Rambam. ואם אכל מעשר שני לוקה מן התורה כדרך שלוקה על אכילת תרומה, שהתרומה קרויה קודש, ומעשר שני קרוי קודש, שהרי נאמר בו קודש להשם. The Rambam is not quoting Rav Sheshet. We'll see why soon. He's not quoting Rav Yitzchak. He's quoting another Gzera Shava, Kodesh Kodesh. What's happening here? The Parshanim of the Rambam asked that question on the Rambam. Let's look what Ri Koku said, because he says something that's very interesting in reading the Yad HaChazakah of the Rambam. I don't know if everybody agrees with this idea that the Ri Koku is saying, but I think it's very interesting to us, and it's an option of reading the Rambam. It says the Ri, גם פרק ההראל באו מיני מרב ששת הראל מהו במעשר, והסיקנא דהראל כטמא. ורבי יצחק יליף למגזרה שווה בפסח, כתיב האחר ממנו וכתיב הטה ממנו. ורבנו תפס למגזרה שמה לתרומה, קודש קודש. So that's the question. Why is the Rambam giving us a gzera shava that's not in the Gemara? He's not using Rav Sheshet, he's not using Rav Yitzchak. Says, Ri, משום, לתרומה דם יתפה למעשר מפסח. ובואו נמי על פין הגזירה שווה למי להכריני. ודרך רבנו לכתוב הטעם או הלימוד היותר פשוט, אף על פי שאינו עיקר הטעם או הלימוד, כיוון דלא נפקא מינה לעניין דינה. So says the reason that the Rambam is choosing this גזירה שווה קודש קודש, even though the Rambam knows that this גזירה שווה is being used for other things, for מילתא אחריתי, the Rambam preferred to use this גזירה שווה to the גזירה שווה of ממנו, because Truma is more like Maaser than Pesach. And the Rambam thinks that this is a better way of teaching the din that Arel is Asur in Maaser Sheni. The Ri is also giving another explanations. I will not go into that, but I just think that's two things that we need to remember, that in the Rambam we have a different Gzera Shava, which is surprising. And that the Ri Kokus is saying maybe the Rambam is saying it not because it's exact halachically, but because it's a better pedagogic way of teaching the din and Arel is Asur in Maaser Sheni. So up till now, we finished with the Pshat. We saw that we have a question, which was hard to understand, so it helped us understand it, and we saw that there are two answers in the Gemara. How do we know that an Arel is Asur in Maaser Sheni? And we know now the din, that Arel is Asur in Maaser Sheni, and not only an Unan. Now, let's look deeper into the answer of Rav Sheshet, which was not brought to halacha in the end, because the Gemara is going to ask questions on Rav Sheshet. But what Rav Sheshet is doing is giving us a Mishnah that Rashi and Tosfot add to us much information on Maaser Sheni, and this is a good opportunity to learn more about Maaser Sheni and the machlokot and ideas that are behind it. So let's look at Rav Sheshet's tshuva. How do we learn that an Arel is Asur in Maaser Sheni? We can't use a kal v'chomer. Amar lahem Rav Sheshet, knitua. We have a Mishnah that teaches us this thing. We don't need a kal v'chomer, we don't need a gzera shava, it's written in the Mishnah. התרומה והביקורים חייבים עליהם מתחת חומש ועשו נזרים, והן נכסי כהן, ועולים באחד ומאה, וטעונים רחיצת ידיים וערב שמש. הרי אלו בתרומה וביקורים, מה שאין כן במעשר. That's the Mishnah. The Mishnah is giving us a list of differences between Truma and Bikurim to Maaser, a long list. Says Rav Sheshet, ואם איתה, ניתני הראל אסור בהם, מה שאין כן במעשר. Rav Sheshet says, the Mishnah gave us all of the differences between Truma and Bikurim. So if there would have been a difference also in Maaser, meaning that an Arel could have eaten Maaser, then the Mishnah had to say that as another difference between Truma and Maaser. And the fact is that she didn't say anything. That's proving that when it comes to Arel, it's the same deed between Truma and Bikurim. Truma and Bikurim you cannot eat. If you're an Arel, same goes to Maaser. If there would have been a difference, the Mishnah would have stated the difference. The Gemara says that's not a good proof. Why? Because sometimes Mishnayot don't include all of the differences. They included some, and they left some aside. Tana v'shir. This is a pshat that's easy to learn. It's a way of reading Mishnah that happens a lot in the Gemara. It's very hard to prove something from not being written in the Mishnah, because many times the Amorim will say Tana v'shir. But here Rashi and Tosfot take one sentence in this Mishnah and add information. Let's look at Rashi. Rashi's dibur matchil vehen nichsei kohen. Says Rashi, vehen nichsei kohen, לקדש בהם את האישה ולקח בהם עבדים וקרקעות ובהמה טמאה. Meaning, תרומה עם ביקורים, they're נכסי kohen. You can be מקדש an אישה, you can buy עבדים, קרקעות, בהמה טמאה, אבל מעשר, says Rashi, לא ניתן אלא לאכילה ושתייה ושיחה, ואין אישה מתקדשת בו. וסתם ישנה רבי מאיר דאמר, מעשר ממון גבוה הוא. Says Rashi, מעשר is more chamor in all kinds of aspects than Truma and Bikurim. Maaser, you can only eat and drink and use it as sicha, and you cannot be mekadesh a woman in it because it's mamon gavoha. Truma and Bikurim are not mamon gavoha. Maaser is mamon gavoha because we're pasking according to Rabbi Meir. Stam mishnah ke Rabbi Meir, Maaser mamon gavoha. Continues Rashi and says, ואף על גב דכולה ולגבי תרומה וביקורים אפילו הכי חשיב להם. Says Rashi, you might have mistaken, when you're reading these sugya, that you would have thought that Maaser is the thing that is the less kadosh in every aspect. Says Rashi, that's not true. You have to understand there are other areas in Maaser that they're chumrot. It's not all kula. If you take Maaser Sheni and take Truma Bikurim in many aspects, Maaser Sheni is more chamor than Truma Bikurim. So that's a very important statement that Rashi tells us, that we need to look at this phenomenon, Maaser Sheni, and understand that it's not only kal. In some aspects, it is more chamor, and actually it is mamon gavoa. Let's look at Tosfot. Tosfot asks a question, and through his question, we get a lot of information on Maaser Sheni. Because up till now, we thought that what Rashi told us is very simple. Everybody agrees that Maaser Sheni is a mamon gavoa. But if we'll read Tosfot, we will see that there is a machloket whether or not Maaser Sheni is mamon gavoa or mamon hediot. Let's look at Tosfot's question. נכסי כהן, בפרק הזרוע והלחיים, מפרש למה אמרו ביקורי נכסי כהן לקח בהם עבדים וקרקעות ובהמה טמאה, מה שאין כבמעשר שני. כדתנן במסכת מעשר שני, ומה הייתי לה בקידושין? אין לוקחים בהמה טמאה עבדים וקרקעות מהמות מעשר שני. ולכאורה, משמע דווקא הני יהודי אסירי, אבל לקח מהם מלבושים שרי. וכן תנן במסכת מעשר שני, ומייתי לן לקמן, לא נתתי ממנו למת, לקח לו ארון ותכריכים. משמע הלכה, דומיה דמת נתתי, דהיינו מלבושים, דהיך ידייק לקמן גבי שיחה. וקשה, בירושלמי אמר בהדיא, לא נתתי ממנו למת. מה אנן קיימינן, אם להביא ארון ותכריכים, דבר זה אסור לחי ולמת, משמע זה אסור לקנות מלבושים לחי. ובכמה מקומות נן במסכת מעשר שני, זה אסור לעשות שום סחורה במעשר, ולא ניתן אלא לאכילה ולשתייה. Says Tosfot, you need to know that what Rashi said that Maaser you can only use for eating, drinking, and sicha, that's a machloket. Actually, here in Dafayin Daled, you see that in our Gemara, it is written, it sounds as if you can use Ma'od Maaser Sheni to buy clothes. You can't use Maaser Sheni to buy clothes for met. You can't use Maaser Sheni for tachlichim, for k'vura. But for chai, you can. So how can you say that you cannot use malbushim at all for Maaser Sheni? Here in our sugya, it says that you can. And the Tosfot says that's a problem because if you read in the Yerushalmi says that you're not allowed to buy malbushim. You can only use it for achila, shtiya, and sicha. So Tosfot asks, I need to understand when we say nichse kohen, we say that you cannot use Maaser Sheni to buy anything, only to eat and drink and sicha. But in our Gemara, in the next stop, that find out it sounds that you can. And it's a stira, machloiket, with Talmud Yerushalmi. So anyway, I'm perplexed here. Can I use Ma'ot Maaser Sheni to buy clothes? If I can, how can I say that it's only Mamon Gavon? Let's look at the answers that Tosfot gives us. Tosfot brings the Ri, and the Ri gives two answers. The first answer of the Ri tells us that what Rashi said is just part of the picture. There's a big machloket on Maaser Sheni. Let's read the Ri. V'omer Ri, דמרנו דהנח משנה דאסירי עטו כרבי מאיר. דאמר ממון גבוה הוא, והנח כרי דשרי. דאמר ממון אדיוט הוא. והדמשנה בפרק בקידושין דליקה אל אחד סתמה כרבי מאיר. אף על גב דהי שרי מלבושים, עטיה כבתי, מכל מקום יש יותר סתמות כרבי מאיר. Says the Ri, go to Kiddushin Daf Ayin Bet, and you will see Nun Bet, and you will see there a machloket between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, whether or not Maaser Sheni is Maaser Gavoa, is Mamon Gavoa or Mamon Idiot. Let's read the Mishnah. המקדש בחלקו בין קודשי קודשים בין קודשים קונים, אינה מקודשת במעשר שני בין שוגג ובין במזיד לא קידש, דברי רבי מאיר. רבי יהודה אומר בשוגג לא קידש במזיד קידש. Rabbi Yehuda thinks that you can't be Mikadosh Isha in Maaser Sheni. How could that be? In the Gemara, there's a Braita that tells us how did Rabbi Yehuda reach this conclusion. Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda אומר מקודשת, רבי יוסי אומר אינה מקודשת. אמר רבי יוחנן, שניהם מקרא אחד דרשו, וזה יהיה לך מקודש הקודשים מן האש. רבי יהודה סבר לך לכל צרכיך, רבי יוסי סבר כאש, מהאש לאכילה, אף הוא נמי לאכילה. We see a machloket in reading the pasuk. The pasuk says, "Ze yeh lecha, maaser yeh lecha, mikodshei kodashim min ha'esh." So Rabbi Yehuda says, "Ze yeh lecha." It's for you, for all of your needs. And Rabbi Yossi says, "No, it's like fire. Fire eats, so you can eat also, but you cannot use it for other needs." So here he says, when we see our Gemara that says that you can buy clothes, maybe this Gemara is according to Rabbi Yehuda. And therefore, our Gemara is Adchuya Gemara. Why? Because halacha is paskin according to Rabbi Meir. If you go back to Kiddushin, you will see that Rabbi Meir has more Mishnayot according to him, that you can only eat and drink and do sicha, and that Mamon Maaser is Mamon Gavoa. And Rabbi Yehuda that says it's Mamon Ediot, that's Adchuya. That's the first answer of the Ri. Now, the understanding of the Ri here is that our sugya is not aliba de hilcheta, if we go according to this. But let's see the second answer of the Ri, and here he is offering a different answer in order to keep our sugya aliba de hilcheta. עוד נראה לרי, והמשניות אינם חולקות זו על זו, מן התורה לא אסיר אלא עבדים בקרקע ובהמת טמאה. אבל מלבושים שרו, ומדרבנן אסרו, אפילו מלבושים. Says the Ri, a different answer. All the Mishnayos think that it's Mamon Gavoa. But even if it's Mamon Gavoa, it is mutar to buy clothes. Clothes are things that were never asur. What is asur? Avadim, kakaot, behemat mea, that's asur. But malbushim, that's mutar from deraita. Why is it written that it's asur by Yerushalmi? Because it's midirabanan. Midirabanan, halacha lemaisa, you can't buy clothes, but that's an isur derabanan. And how do we read the Yerushalmi? The Yerushalmi says, it's learning this din that you cannot buy clothes from a pasuk. Says Tosfot, that pasuk is an asmachta be'alma. Even though there's a pasuk in the Yerushalmi, doesn't mean that this halacha is halacha deraisa. So these are the two answers of the Ri, and he gives us a lot of information. What does the Ri add to us? So let's sum up. Rashi told us, Maaser Sheni is Mamon Gavoa. You can only eat, drink, and do sicha. Tosfot says, yeah, there's a machloket, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says Mamon Gavoa, Rabbi Yehuda says Mamon Idiot. And Tosfot says there's two different ways of understanding the isur to buy clothes from Maaser Sheni. One option is that is according to Rabbi Meir, and Rabbi Yehuda is cholek. Another understanding is also Rabbi Meir agrees that midiraita is mutar. It's only an isur derabanan. So that's what Tosfot added to us, another depth from Rashi, and we got more information and more machlokot through the Tosfot. I just want to finish here also by looking at the Rambam and summing up all we learned through the Rambam. So the Rambam, in Maaser Sheni, Perek Gimel, started by telling us that an Arel is also asur in Maaser Sheni. We commented at the fact that the Rambam is using a different Surash, but it is not written in our Gemarot. And we saw one answer in understanding why the Rambam is doing this. We also know that Anunen is asur, and the Rambam is explaining to us that this din of Bananut has been learned from Maaser Sheni to all of Kochi in Halacha Zayin. In Halacha Yud, Rambam is saying that you can only use Maaser Sheni for achila, shtiya, besicha, and you're not allowed to buy with it clothes and begadim and avadim. And here the Rambam is quoting the Yerushalmi, sheneimar nantati mimenu lamed, and he sounds as if he does not agree with the Ri, and it seems as if the Rambam is saying this halacha that you're not allowed to buy anything from Maaser Sheni as halacha deoraita, and not like the Ri offered as an asmachta be'alma in halacha the Rabbanan. And the Rambam continues also to say that Maaser Sheni is mamon gavoa, as we learn from Rashi and Tosfot, even if there is a machloket, pasking according to Rabbi Meir. So today we use Tosfot to do two things. One, to understand the pshat of the sugya, first Tosfot we saw, and two, to add with Rashi and Tosfot more information and knowledge on something that we learn in the Gemara. As you all know, the Gemara, learning Gemara is a paradox. You're supposed to know all the Shas when you learn the Shas. So what the Rishonim help us do is fill up holes that we have in a way that Bezrat Hashem, we will be able to know the Shas when we learn the Shas. Bezrat Hashem. Take care and continue enjoying this lovely Masechet. Take care.